Hello there, and welcome to an episode that I hope will be both practical and a little bit philosophical as well. We're going to talk about what goals lead you to where you want to be and what goals lead you in the opposite direction. And then we'll answer the eternal question of, should you have a goal in the first place? Isn't the goal not to have a goal? Well, we'll cover all that in this episode. I hope you'll find a lot of value here. Let's get right to it. Why this is important, I think, is that goals, they sort of determine how we think of success. And in this context, success, I mean, if we think we're moving in a helpful direction or not, if we think things are going our way or not, and goals really determine that. Goals can lead us towards a place where there's more effort, more pain, more struggling, more trouble, or goals can lead us to a place where there's freedom, where it's less struggle, less pain, less suffering, and more bliss. It's a strong word, but I believe this is true. And this is why I want to talk about goals, because so often I find that clients have a goal that actually is taking them in a direction where they don't want to be. So let's take a look at two examples of goals. And you can, as we're going over them, you ask yourself if you think these are helpful goals or not so helpful goals. So example one is sleeping consistently for more than 6 hours on average per night, or more than 40 hours on average per week. This can seem kind of reasonable, It can seem like, well, I don't have a very high goal. My goal is not to sleep like 8 hours every night. My goal is pretty reasonable as long as on average I get more than 6 hours per night, or even even per week. I'm okay with 40 hours on average per week. That sounds like pretty reasonable, doesn't it? Well, probably not, and we'll get to why in a second. But let's take a look at example number two, which is keeping anxiety at a manageable level, or keeping thoughts somewhat controlled. Again, this can seem really reasonable. The goal isn't to be like, the Dalai Lama here. The goal is just to have manage your anxiety somewhat, or have some level of control of your thoughts. Again, sounds pretty reasonable. But why am I presenting these two goals in a way that kind of gives away that I think that they're not helpful? Well, think about where they lead. If you use the first goal of sleeping a certain amount on average, that leads automatically to monitoring that thing we call success. Again, this in this example, success will be to achieve a certain amount of hours per night or per week. And that automatically leads to monitoring yourself, checking how you're doing, and when you don't achieve your goal, you become more anxious, you blame yourself. And when you achieve it, you become victorious, which also sustains the loop you are in. So that's problematic, as we can see. And the other one too, when you think that, okay, if I can just manage my anxiety a little bit, then days where you feel less anxious, it feels kind of like a win, and you achieved something, which keeps you trying to achieve, trying to manage, trying to control, which again is where the pain comes from. So these types of goals, these goals that lead you towards trying to have control and achieve things, they lead to performance anxiety by nature. They lead to self-criticism. And this is so important, because when you've had a certain goal and when you feel like you're falling short of it, that leads you to criticize yourself, and also to kind of like tweak the goals and change them, which kind of keeps the loop going as well. It also, like, self-criticism also leads to frustration, where you're like, I'm trying and trying, I just can't achieve, just can't do it. And hopelessness, which is when you've tried so much and nothing seems to work, and then you get stuck. So this is the paradox here, which some goals actually get you stuck. Some goals do not lead you anywhere, they get you stuck. So, now we've seen the problem with these types of goals, then, let's take a look at some other goals. What other goals can you have? Well, look at this one. Not judging yourself for having sleepless nights. Just like read that, say that to yourself, and just think of how that makes you feel. Not judging yourself for having sleepless nights. It sort of automatically is relieving. It's it's so easily done in a way, because there's nothing you have to do. The goal is just to not judge yourself for having a sleepless night. And that can seem impractical, like, okay, so how's that going to help me? But truly it will, because it leads away from everything we saw with the other type of goals. It leads away from performance anxiety, away from self-criticism, away from hopelessness, and away from being stuck. It actually liberates you and takes you towards arriving where you want to be. Another one, similar one, not criticizing myself for any emotions or thoughts. Also very liberating. Okay, I can have anxiety and I can have a lot of thoughts racing in my mind, but I'm not going to criticize myself for them. That is a very helpful goal, because again, it leads towards less struggle and more peace. So if you, for example, using these goals, if you experience all this discomfort, the discomfort of being up all night, the discomfort of having a lot of anxiety, without berating yourself for something you didn't have control over anyway, this now becomes your success. With these type of goals, the success now is absence of berating yourself. Now, and that kind of, this becomes a nice loop now, because if that's success, then it becomes easier to feel good about what you're doing and feel like, oh, I didn't criticize myself. I had all this anxiety, but I didn't criticize myself. Okay, I'm successful. I'm on the path here. I'm doing well. It becomes very, very nice. So to kind of summarize this first episode, this first part here, how do you now, knowing what we know now, how do you choose a goal? Because we just talked about a few examples. When you think about like, okay, I think this would be a goal for me, then just ponder how it will lead you. Like, will this lead me towards more struggle and more trying to achieve and more goal-oriented activity? Then probably not. Like, does it lead me towards less struggling and less self-criticism? Then that is perhaps a good goal. And I'm smiling right now because I used the word goal-oriented already, which actually segues nicely to the more philosophical part of this episode, which is, can absence of something be a goal? Can there be a goalless goal? And if you think about someone who is sleeping well and isn't bothered by anxiety, then it's good to take note of the fact that that person actually doesn't have a goal. It's not like that person is actively thanking themselves for not criticizing themselves for having a sleepless night or for being anxious, etc. So that person doesn't really have any such goals. So should you have a goal? Well, here's the thing. I think having, when you are in the struggle, it can be sort of a big leap, if you will, to go to a place in a heartbeat where there is no goal whatsoever. And so I do believe that having a goalless goal can help you arrive at a place where there is a goal. A little effort can lead you to lead you to a place of no effort, if you will, and a place where there is peaceful sleep and complete absence of any effort. So I hope this was both practical and philosophical and helpful to you and brought some value. And any questions, comments, please leave them in the comments section. And you can always also head over to the sleepcoachschool.com if you want to leave a question for open class or find ways to work with myself. Having said that, again, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to have you back here real soon. Until then,